Rain-soaked serendipity. The Seattle rain fell in sheets, turning the April afternoon into a misty gray tableau. Oliver Reed watched the downpour from his Tesla, sighing as his driver navigated through the congested streets. At 42, Oliver had built Cipher Technologies into a billion-dollar company, but success had constructed walls around him rather than bridges to others. "Sir, there's flooding on the main route. We'll need to detour through Willow Lane," his driver announced. Oliver nodded absently, his attention caught by a woman frantically placing buckets outside a charming but weathered storefront. A vintage sign reading, "Turning Page Books," swung precariously in the wind. Without thinking, he spoke. "Pull over, James." "Sir, your meeting is in 20. It can wait." Oliver was already opening the door, unfurling his umbrella against the torrent. Naomi Chen was fighting a losing battle. Water seeped under the doorway of her grandmother's bookshop, threatening the carefully curated collection of first editions near the entrance. At 36, she had abandoned a promising career in publishing to save the struggling family business, a decision her pragmatic parents still couldn't understand. "Need some help?" Naomi looked up, startled by the deep voice. A tall man in an impeccably tailored suit stood before her, his Italian leather shoes already soaked from the puddles. "Unless you can control the weather, I don't think anyone can help," she replied, her tone more defeated than sarcastic. Oliver smiled, a rare, genuine expression that transformed his serious face. "I'm not quite that powerful, but I do have a car full of towels and a driver who's excellent at building makeshift barriers." Within minutes, James had joined them, and Oliver had removed his suit jacket, rolling up his sleeves to stack sandbags from a nearby construction site. Naomi watched in bewilderment as this stranger, clearly wealthy and important, knelt on her wet floor directing operations like a general. "You really don't have to do this," she said, handing him a cup of tea an hour later when the immediate crisis had been averted. "I know." Oliver accepted the chipped mug, looking oddly comfortable among the stacks of books despite his now rumpled shirt. "I'm Oliver Reed." He waited for the flash of recognition, the slight change in demeanor people showed when they realized who he was. Instead, Naomi simply extended her hand. "Naomi Chen. Thank you for saving my grandmother's books." For the first time in years, Oliver felt like just a man, not a corporate entity or a fortune. He glanced around the shop, noticing the careful organization, the handwritten recommendation cards, the worn leather armchairs inviting readers to stay a while. "This place is special," he said quietly. Naomi's expression softened. "It's a labor of love, though lately it's been more labor than anything else." The rain continued its assault outside, but inside the bookshop, time seemed to slow. Oliver canceled his meeting, helping Naomi move vulnerable books to higher shelves. They talked about literature, weather patterns, and the changing face of Seattle, careful, neutral topics that nonetheless revealed glimpses of their personalities. As evening approached, the rain finally subsided. Oliver looked at his watch, surprised by how quickly hours had passed. "I should go," he said reluctantly. "Of course." Naomi walked him to the door. "Your assistant must be having a fit." "Executive panic is his natural state," Oliver replied with a small smile. He paused at the threshold. "I hope the shop will be all right." "It's survived worse," Naomi said, though uncertainty shadowed her eyes. Oliver nodded, suddenly awkward. "I'm looking for some new books. Mind if I stop by sometime?" "We're open every day but Monday," Naomi replied, her smile genuine if puzzled. As Oliver returned to his waiting car, he realized he'd left his umbrella behind. Looking back at the weathered bookshop, a strange feeling settled in his chest. Not the satisfaction of charity, but something warmer, something that felt oddly like coming home after a long journey. What he didn't know then was that forgotten umbrella would become the first chapter in a story neither of them expected to write. Pages between us 3 weeks had passed since the rainstorm, and Oliver Reed had become a fixture at Turning Page Books. What began as a single return visit to retrieve his forgotten umbrella had evolved into an almost daily ritual. The tech mogul would arrive in the late afternoon, select a book from Naomi's recommendations, and settle into the worn leather armchair by the window. Today, he arrived carrying a paper bag from the local bakery, nodding to Mrs. Hernandez and elderly regular who always occupied the corner seat with her romance novels. "You're spoiling us," Naomi said as Oliver placed the bag on the counter, revealing still warm cinnamon rolls. "Mrs. Hernandez will never leave if you keep this up." "Good. She gives the best book recommendations," Oliver replied, his corporate stiffness gradually softening with each visit. "How's business today?" Naomi's smile dimmed slightly. "Slow. The new chain bookstore opened in the plaza last week." Oliver frowned. Retro Reads was a corporate giant that mimicked independent bookstore aesthetics while undercutting their prices. He'd witnessed their expansion across 3 states during his market research. "People will realize it's not the same," he offered, though uncertainty threaded his words. Naomi shrugged, her practical nature asserting itself. "Maybe. Until then, I've started hosting more events." She pointed to a chalkboard announcing an upcoming poetry night. "Free publicity if nothing else." Oliver studied her as she arranged a new display. Naomi wore reading glasses perched on her nose, her dark hair twisted into a messy bun secured by what appeared to be a pencil. Unlike the polished, calculated women in his social circle, everything about her seemed authentic. Her enthusiasms, her worries, even the ink stains on her fingers. "I don't understand something," he said abruptly. "You mentioned you were an editor at Meridian Publishing. That's a prestigious position. Why leave it for—" He gestured around the modest shop. "For this struggling business?" Naomi finished, not offended. "My grandmother raised me in this shop after my parents died. Every important lesson I learned came from either her or these books. When she got sick, there wasn't really a choice." Oliver nodded, understanding devotion to family legacy all too well. His own father had built Cipher from nothing, though the legacy he'd left was more complicated than Naomi's grandmother's. "What about you?" Naomi asked, shelving a returned copy of The Great Gatsby. "Your assistant called yesterday to reschedule your visit. She mentioned you were in Tokyo and back the same day. That sounds exhausting." Oliver smiled wryly. "That's Diane. She probably told you my blood type and shoe size, too. Only that you prefer Earl Grey to English breakfast, which I've already stocked," Naomi teased. The easy banter between them still surprised Oliver. In his world, conversations were strategic, each word calculated for effect. With Naomi, words flowed without agenda. "Tokyo was just business," he said. "Cipher is expanding our security division." "Cipher?" Naomi's brow furrowed. "Wait, you're that Oliver Reed? The encryption software Oliver Reed?" There it was, the moment he'd been unconsciously dreading, the recognition that would change how she saw him. "Guilty," he admitted, tensing slightly. Naomi tilted her head. "Huh, I pictured someone more arrogant, tech bro-ish," he supplied. "I was going to say someone who knew how to use our antique register without getting frustrated," she replied with a laugh. "You nearly broke it last week." Relief washed over him. She knew, but it didn't matter to her. That evening, after helping Naomi close the shop, Oliver lingered. "I have tickets to the symphony Friday night, Dvorak's New World Symphony. Would you like to join me?" The invitation hung between them, transforming their comfortable friendship into something potentially more complex. Naomi hesitated, then smiled. "I haven't been to the symphony in years." "Is that a yes?" Oliver pressed gently. "It's a yes," she confirmed. "But I should warn you, I might fall asleep during the slow movements. It happens." Oliver laughed, a full, rich sound rarely heard in boardrooms. "I'll bring coffee." As he walked to his car, Oliver realized something had shifted. For the first time in years, he was looking forward to something that had nothing to do with Cipher's stock price or market share. Instead, his thoughts were filled with the image of Naomi Chen sitting beside him in Symphony Hall, perhaps nodding off during the adagio, completely unimpressed by his wealth but charmed by his taste in music. What began as a chance encounter during a rainstorm was evolving into something neither of them had expected, a connection that bridged their different worlds through shared moments and the simple pleasure of finding someone who saw beyond the surface to the person beneath. When the storm returns, the symphony had been just the beginning. Over the next 2 months, Oliver and Naomi's lives intertwined in ways neither had anticipated. They explored hidden Seattle bookshops on rainy Sundays, argued passionately over plot points in shared novels, and gradually revealed the layers of their lives to each other. For Oliver, who had spent years surrounded by people interested only in his wealth and influence, Naomi's straightforward nature was refreshingly authentic. For Naomi, Oliver's genuine interest in her small world was both puzzling and endearing. On a warm June morning, Naomi arrived at Turning Page Books to find an official-looking envelope slipped under the door. Her heart sank as she read the contents. Westlake Development Corporation was purchasing the entire block for renovation. All tenants had 90 days to vacate. "They can't do this," Oliver insisted that evening, pacing the small apartment above the bookstore where Naomi lived. "There must be some clause in your lease." Naomi sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by legal papers. The building owner died last month. His children sold it immediately. The lease has a change of ownership clause that I never noticed. She rubbed her temples. "I was so focused on saving the books, I never thought about saving the building." Oliver's jaw tightened. He recognized Westlake's tactics. They typically acquired declining properties in up-and-coming neighborhoods, using capital that small business owners couldn't hope to match. "What if you relocated?" he suggested. "Commercial rent in Seattle?" Naomi laughed bitterly. "I can barely afford this place, and I've been here 15 years. The inventory alone would cost thousands to move." Oliver hesitated, then spoke carefully. "I could help, financially." The silence that followed was heavy. Naomi finally looked up, her expression complex. "That's kind, but no. I won't take your money, Oliver." "It wouldn't be charity," he insisted. "It would be an investment in a failing bookstore." Her voice held an edge now. "Let's be realistic. Independent bookstores are a labor of love, not a smart business move." Oliver wanted to argue but recognized the pride in her stance. Instead, he nodded. "We'll find another solution." But as days passed, no solution presented itself. Naomi began the heartbreaking process of inventory liquidation, selling precious volumes at discounted prices. Each sale felt like losing a friend. Oliver couldn't bear watching her world crumble. Without telling Naomi, he directed his corporate legal team to investigate Westlake Development. When he discovered the building sale wasn't yet finalized, he made his move. Cipher Technologies, through a subsidiary, purchased the entire block for significantly above market value, with the stipulation that existing tenants could maintain their current lease terms. The morning Naomi received notice that her eviction was canceled, she was confused but elated. The new owner, listed as Folio Holdings, had extended her lease for 10 years at the same rental rate. Her first call was to Oliver, who answered with suspicious promptness. "It's incredible news," she bubbled. "Some company bought the building and they're letting us stay. Can you believe it?" There was a pause before Oliver replied. "That's wonderful, Naomi." Something in his tone made her pause. "You don't sound surprised." The silence that followed confirmed her sudden suspicion. "Oliver," she said slowly. "What did you do?" That evening, their confrontation in the bookstore after hours was heated. Books trembled on their shelves as Naomi paced between stacks. "You had no right," she insisted, voice tight with emotion. "No right to swoop in like some financial superhero." "I was trying to help," Oliver countered, frustration evident. "The store means everything to you. And that was my problem to solve." "Mine?" Naomi's eyes flashed. "Do you have any idea how this makes me feel? Like a charity case. Like someone who couldn't handle her own life without a billionaire's intervention?" Oliver's expression hardened. "That's not fair. I care about you. I couldn't just watch everything you love disappear." "But you didn't ask me," Naomi said, her voice dropping to a whisper. You made decisions about my life, my business, without even consulting me, just like every other powerful person who thinks money gives them the right to control the world around them." The words struck deep. Oliver had spent his life distinguishing himself from his father, who had wielded wealth like a weapon. Now Naomi was looking at him with the same wariness he'd seen in countless eyes across boardroom tables. "I should go," he said stiffly. Naomi didn't stop him as he walked to the door, where he paused without turning. "For what it's worth, I didn't do it because I thought you couldn't handle your problems. I did it because I'm falling in love with you and I couldn't bear to see you lose something that matters so much." The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving Naomi alone among her saved books, feeling both rescued and abandoned all at once. Outside, rain began to fall, a gentle summer shower that whispered against the windows of turning-page books, echoing the first storm that had brought them together. But this time, Oliver walked away into the downpour without an umbrella, and Naomi remained inside, surrounded by everything she'd wanted to save, wondering why victory felt so hollow. Bridges built from truth for 2 weeks, turning-page books existed in a strange limbo. Customers returned, relieved the beloved shop wasn't closing, but they sensed the change in Naomi. Her recommendations lacked their usual enthusiasm, and the chair by the window remained conspicuously empty. Oliver hadn't returned since their argument, though a box of rare first editions had arrived without a note. His unspoken apology. Naomi placed them on display but couldn't bring herself to open them. Each gilt-edged volume reminded her of the impossible divide between them, his instinct to solve problems with money, and her fierce need for independence. On a foggy Wednesday morning, Diane, Oliver's assistant, appeared at the counter, her corporate efficiency softened by obvious discomfort. "Mr. Reed asked me to deliver these documents," she said, sliding a folder across the counter. "He said to tell you it's not a solution, just information." After Diane left, Naomi opened the folder to find legal papers transferring ownership of the building to a non-profit trust. The beneficiaries were all current tenants, including turning-page books. A handwritten note was paper-clipped to the front. "The choice is yours." That evening, Naomi found herself outside the gleaming Cipher Technologies tower downtown. She'd never visited Oliver's world before. Now, standing in the soaring glass lobby with its minimalist design, she felt acutely out of place in her vintage cardigan and practical shoes. "Ms. Chen," the receptionist greeted her with practiced warmth. "Mr. Reed is expecting you." Oliver's office occupied the top floor, with panoramic views of the city and Puget Sound beyond. He stood as she entered, his expression carefully neutral, though his eyes betrayed his surprise at her arrival. "You came," he said simply. "I read the documents," Naomi replied, remaining near the door. "A tenant-owned trust? That's creative." "It removes me from the equation," Oliver explained, not approaching her. "Each tenant owns their portion. No one can sell without unanimous consent. It's democracy, not charity." Naomi moved to the window, gazing at the city lights below. "Why go to such lengths?" Oliver joined her, maintaining a respectful distance. "Because you were right. I made decisions for you, not with you. I've spent my life in a world where problems are solved with money and power. It's efficient, but impersonal," Naomi supplied. "Yes." He turned to face her fully. "My father built this company through force of will. He didn't ask permission or consider feelings. I watched him steamroll people my entire childhood, including my mother. I promised myself I'd be different. And yet here we are," Naomi said softly. "Here we are," he agreed. "I acted exactly like him. The moment something threatened someone I care about, I reached for the only tool I really trust: financial power." The honesty in his voice moved her. For the first time, Naomi saw the vulnerability beneath his controlled exterior, a man haunted by the fear of becoming what he most resented. "I grew up with nothing," she said after a moment. "When my parents died, my grandmother barely kept us afloat. Every achievement, every stability I've created came from my own effort. That's why your help felt like an erasure." Oliver nodded slowly. Two people can't be more different than we are. And yet, Naomi ventured, we keep finding our way back to each other. A tentative smile formed on Oliver's lips. Like characters, who keep meeting in different books? Terrible ones, apparently. All this drama. Naomi shook her head, but a reluctant smile emerged. I miss our conversations. I miss everything, Oliver admitted. The shop, the quiet, watching you recommend exactly the right book to every person who walks through your door. I even miss Mrs. Hernandez asking if I'm courting you. Naomi laughed despite herself. She's convinced you're my gentleman caller. I think she's been reading too much Tennessee Williams. The tension between them eased slightly, but the fundamental question remained unresolved. I don't know if I can sign those papers, Naomi said honestly. Not because they're unfair, they're incredibly generous, but because I'm not sure I belong in your world, Oliver. The person who creates legal trusts and buys buildings on impulse. That's not my world, Oliver said quietly. That's just the trappings. My world is the one where we argue about whether Fitzgerald understood love better than Austen, where you fall asleep during Dvorak and I pretend not to notice, where for the first time in my life, I'm just Oliver, not the CEO of Cypher. Hesitated, then continued. I don't want to change your life, Naomi. I just want to be part of it, on whatever terms make sense for both of us. Naomi studied him, this complex man who commanded an empire, but stood before her now with uncertainty. In his eyes, the divide between them was real, but perhaps not as insurmountable as she had feared. I don't have answers, she admitted, but I'm willing to look for them together. Oliver's smile was like sunrise. That's all I ask. As they left the tower together, the fog had lifted, revealing a sky scattered with stars. They walked side by side, not touching but closer than before, two people from different worlds finding a narrow bridge between them, one built not of wealth or pride, but of honest words and the courage to speak them. Beyond chapters and codes autumn painted, Seattle in amber and crimson as turning page books transformed. The shelves remained, the books still waited patiently for the right readers, but subtle changes appeared throughout the space. A modern espresso machine hummed behind the counter, while a sleek digital catalog terminal stood beside the antique register. In the back room, once cluttered with overstock, a small tech hub hosted weekly coding classes for neighborhood children. 6 months had passed since that night in Oliver's office. The tenant trust now owned the building outright, with each business contributing what they could to maintenance and improvements. For turning page books, that meant embracing evolution without losing its soul. Naomi arranged fresh flowers on the counter, glancing at the wall where framed blueprints hung beside her grandmother's original shop opening announcement. Community chapters read the plans, a network of independent bookstores sharing resources while maintaining their unique identities. The bell over the door jingled, and Oliver entered carrying 2 coffee cups. At 43, he looked younger. Somehow, the perpetual tension in his shoulders replaced by an easy confidence. He no longer wore suits to the bookshop, instead favoring casual sweaters that made him look more professor than CEO. Mrs. Hernandez is holding court outside, he said, handing Naomi her tea. She's telling everyone about the Tokyo expansion. I think she's appointed herself our PR director, Naomi laughed. She's been practicing her Japanese. Says she wants to visit our Tokyo store next spring. Your Tokyo store, Oliver corrected gently. I'm just the technology consultant. This was their careful balance. Oliver had stepped back from Cypher's day-to-day operations, creating a new division focused on supporting small businesses through accessible technology. Community Chapters was their pilot project, with turning page books as its heart. Naomi maintained complete creative control, while Oliver provided the technical infrastructure that helped the shop not just survive, but thrive in the digital age. The Portland location confirmed for January, Naomi said, checking her tablet. That makes 7 shops in the network. Oliver nodded, pride evident in his expression, and 62 applications waiting for review. What had begun as a solution for one bookstore had evolved into a movement. Independent bookshops across the country were joining their platform, sharing inventory databases and event calendars while maintaining their individual character. Publishers now courted community chapters with exclusive editions and author events, recognizing the power of connected independence. "Did you ever imagine this?" Naomi asked, gesturing around the shop where customers browsed comfortably, some using the custom app Oliver had designed to find recommendations based on their reading history. "Honestly, no," Oliver admitted. "I thought technology and tradition were opposing forces. You taught me they could complement each other." Naomi smiled, remembering their heated debates about digitization versus preservation. Those arguments had shaped their venture, challenging both of them to abandon entrenched positions and find middle ground. "The investors' meeting went well?" she asked, referring to yesterday's presentation at Cypher. "Better than expected. Turns out social impact investment is having a moment," Oliver replied. "Though I think it helped that our quarterly returns exceeded projections." Naomi nodded, still occasionally surprised by the business vocabulary that now peppered her literary world. Just as Oliver had learned to distinguish first editions from book club prints, she had mastered balance sheets and market projections. Their different perspectives had created something neither could have built alone. As evening approached, they closed the shop together, a ritual they'd maintained through all the changes. Oliver shelved returned books, while Naomi balanced the register, their movements synchronized by months of shared routine. "I have something for you," Oliver said as they finished, retrieving a wrapped package from his messenger bag. Naomi unwrapped it carefully to find a leather-bound journal, the cover embossed with a simple design, an umbrella sheltering an open book. "It's been exactly 1 year," Oliver explained, "since that rainstorm." Naomi traced the embossing with her finger. "You remembered." "How could I forget? It was the day everything changed," he said softly. She opened the journal to find the first page already filled with his precise handwriting. "For Naomi, who taught me that the greatest stories begin when we least expect them. The first chapter was written by chance, but I hope to write all the rest together." Naomi looked up at him, emotion tightening her throat. "We've come a long way from that flooded bookshop, and from the arrogant CEO who thought he could fix everything with money," Oliver added ruefully. "You weren't arrogant," Naomi corrected. "Just used to a different world than mine." Oliver took her hand, his expression earnest. "I love our world now. This one we've built between your books and my technology, between your wisdom and my resources." Naomi squeezed his hand, remembering the vastness of the divide that had once seemed insurmountable between them. "It wasn't easy." "The best stories never are," Oliver replied. Outside, rain began to fall, a gentle autumn shower that pattered against the windows. But unlike that first day, neither of them noticed the weather. They were too absorbed in each other, in the warmth of the shop they'd saved together, and in the future stretching before them. Chapters yet unwritten but promising to be the most compelling part of their story. Later that evening, as they walked hand in hand beneath a shared umbrella toward the small apartment Naomi still kept, above the shop, despite Oliver's gentle suggestions about his lakeside home, she paused on the threshold. "You know what I realized today?" she asked. "That rainstorm wasn't really the beginning." Oliver raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "No?" "No," Naomi said with certainty. "The real story began when you decided to stop your car, and I decided to accept a stranger's help. The rain was just setting the scene." Oliver smiled, understanding completely. "The choices we make in small moments, what create the lives we eventually live," Naomi finished. As they crossed the threshold together, the umbrella closed behind them. No longer needed, but never forgotten. It had sheltered them through that first storm, and now stood as a silent witness to the truth they'd discovered. That sometimes the most unlikely encounters lead to the most perfect partnerships, and that love, like the best stories, reveals itself not in grand gestures, but in the quiet moments when two different worlds find their shared language. The bookshop below them creaked contentedly, its shelves holding thousands of stories, but none quite as unexpected as the one still unfolding between its owner and the man who had once simply stopped to help a stranger in the rain.